Now, we said before that Active Directory is for managing users. It's identity as a service. And so, theoretically, you can go into your Active Directory and you can say, I want to add a new user. Let's add Joe Smith as a user. Now, Joe Smith, his email is joe.smith@gmail.com. Okay, we're going to add Joe Smith as a user, but we'll see right away that we cannot add Joe Smith as a full-on user because gmail.com is not our domain name, and of course it's a Google account. It could never be our domain name. So we have to use a domain for Joe Smith, and so let's say, oh, it's company.com. But even company.com is not a managed verified domain name in this Active Directory. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is add a custom domain name. Now, something will work. I'll show you what it will work because we created this Active Directory as Scott's Course Outlook at .onmicrosoft.com. So if I put Joe Smith at Scott's Course Outlook at .onmicrosoft.com as the email address, that will work because this domain is managed by this Active Directory. Even though this isn't a real email account, we could create a user with this email account and it would be a valid user to log into our applications. But many of us want to do single sign-on. We want users to be able to use the same user ID and password in Active Directory in their company as well as using our applications that connect to Azure Active Directory. So to do that, we're going to need to add a custom domain name. So I'm going to close off that, go up to the top level, and we're going to see custom domain names down the settings here. Go into here, and right now we've got the default, which was when we created it, scottscourseoutlook.onmicrosoft.com. This I added a long time ago, cloudcafe.co. It is a verified domain. But what we want to do, let's add another verified domain. What this means is we'll be able to add our company domain to this Azure Directory, and if we can verify that we own it, then users can use those domain names to create accounts and to log in. Now, I happen to own a number of domain names, and so we're going to use one of my domain names, herocourses.net. So we're going to tell Microsoft Azure Active Directory that we own this domain, and then we should be able to manage users that have this domain name. So I'm going to say add domain. Now we do need to prove that we own it. This is very similar to the way that Microsoft requires proof for a DNS when you're doing DNS records managed applications. So we need to prove that we own it. In order to prove that we own it, we need to add the following information into our domain name service. So this is a TXT record with this alias and this text field basically. And so we're going to have to go to our registrar, modify this to add a TXT record, and prove that we own this. Now my registrar happens to be Namecheap, and so I'm going to have to go into the DNS section. So I'll go down here, go into DNS, and we're going to have to add, like it says, a TXT record. Now it already contains one TXT record, so we're going to have to add a new record. This is a TXT record. Host is an @ symbol according to this. I'm going to copy the value, and they want the TTL to be 1 hour, which is 3600. And so I'm going to say save. So this is saved. And if we go back to the Azure website, we can click the verify button, but for now it's not going to find this TXT record that it's looking for. We'll give the DNS system let's give it a day to update. So in order to add a custom domain, you just have to add it very simply, but then you have to prove that you own it, and you prove that you own it by making changes to the DNS records. So it's the next morning, and I go into the herocourses.net domain. I click verify, and it says domain name verified. And so it was successfully verified. I can close this out, And we can see that now herocourses.net is a valid domain in the list of domains. If I go over to the users section and create a new user, I can create test user. And if I use the herocourses.net domain, then you can see that Microsoft puts a green check mark next to it, which means it's a valid domain. So in this video, we've added a custom domain to Active Directory, which we can start using for users and systems.